All right, they're talking about virtual adapters. And so, James, are you specifically referring to Hyper-V or Virtual Machine Manager? I don't have Virtual Machine Manager in front of me, Hyper-V. Oh, okay, well, all right, even. Okay, so I have right here Hyper-V Manager. And even though I'm doing this on Windows 10, but just to let you all know, and you can tell I've really been working a lot with virtual machines lately because I have none. But I'll take you all through a couple of things here. When you're setting up virtual machine environments, the biggest use that people will have for multiple network adapters is to be able to set one up that they can keep private to their network, and then maybe set one up where they can make public. So if you're going to host some virtual servers, for example, you have to decide, okay, is this going to be like a total private network? Am I just doing some experimenting here? Am I just doing some testing? Or do I want this network to have access to the outside world? So, okay, Eric. So the whole idea is, first thing you have to decide is, what am I going to do here? All right. Then it's not just a matter of setting up network adapters. You do need to pay attention to what we call here the virtual switch manager. Now, I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. You have to decide, do I want this virtual switch to be external, internal, or private? Now, the external and the private ones are pretty self-explanatory in the sense that with it being external, you can access the outside network with the switch that you create. If it's private, it's only going to be internal to whatever virtual network you set up, so it's not going to have any outside access. The tricky one is the one in between, and frankly, it doesn't get used too much. It's internal. But what it does is it shares the connection, if you will, between the virtual PCs or virtuals that you build, and then the PC that you're actually working on. So whether it's a server or in this case a Windows 10 machine, basically what this means is that your virtual machines, if you go through this switch, will be able to talk directly to this PC. So you can send files back and forth, especially if you're using a Generation 2 virtual machine. But it's not going to have access to the outside network. So sometimes people will set that up because they want to be able to take from this server, this PC, or whatever, they want to be able to send files. Now, what's the key here? Well, let's say I want to start off with a private virtual switch. And I'm going to go ahead and create it. So I'll give it a name. You can tell I'm very creative with the names here. And that's that. Okay, so I've created a private virtual switch. And it'll just take a moment to take care of that. Now let's say I want to go through and create an external one because maybe I want to allow these machines to get out to the regular network. So I'll call this one external. You know, I used to do this all the time in setting up for Microsoft courses I used to teach in the classroom. And let me just share with you all one thing you want to be on the lookout for. Now, I don't know for sure if this is a test question, but this is a good real life, you know, let's make sure you don't miss this. It's good troubleshooting too, actually. So you'll notice for the external network, I got a Wi-Fi USB adapter here. Now, I also have a couple of network adapters, and I actually have VMware installed on this. Of course, you can't run both at the same time. At least I haven't had success doing so. Maybe you can now, but the whole idea is that you want to make sure you have the correct network adapter. Now, let me give you all a troubleshooting situation while you're here, and that's it. If you have, for whatever reason, a device you're using, like a server or even a PC, and sometimes it's wired and sometimes it's wireless. I've seen more than one situation where the network changed, but this wasn't updated that you see here, so what happened? Well, people get on these virtual machines and they can't get anywhere on the network. Why? Because it's pointing to the wrong adapter. In fact, when I filmed the Windows Server 2012 courses, which was, I want to say, near the end of 2013, I think. Yeah, sounds about right. Anyway, when we first got in one day, I didn't know that somebody had unplugged the network cable and they were using Wi-Fi, which is fine. I mean, the Wi-Fi is pretty decent. But we couldn't get on out on any of the machines at first. And it was giving us, they were all giving us loading errors and all this other stuff, and it turned out it was the setting right here. The switch was set to the wrong network adapter. So that is something you have to pay attention to. It is a possible test question on one of the Windows Server exams. And you just got to really be aware of that, okay? So because I'm using a Wi-Fi adapter here, so I don't have cables all over my office here, my home office, I have set this up. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So now I've got a couple of switches here. And this is a very common Hyper-V setup, because then you can turn around and assign these to your machines. And I don't have any virtual machines here. It would take too long to set one up right now. Maybe, we'll see. And yes, the external changes always take longer than the internal changes, so we just got to patiently wait here for this to show up and finish up and whatnot. So all right. By the way, can you all still see my screen? Because my network connection got interrupted while I was doing that for you. Okay, good. All righty. So,
Yeah.
Good, good. Yeah, see, it actually did what it said it was going to do. It interrupted my network connections for a second. So, okay. Okay, so now we've got the switch manager set up. Now, if you're going to go in and make let's say I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a virtual machine. All righty. So, I'm going to be very sloppy here and take the defaults. Now, I'm going to do a generation 2. That's another thing, too. If you're studying Windows Server, make sure you're paying attention to the differences between generation 1 and generation 2 machines, because you can't go back and change your mind later on. And there's a couple other features that you have with generation 2. You can transfer files more easily and things like that. So I'm going to choose generation 2 because I can. For the startup memory, I'll just go with 2 gigs. I'm not going to use dynamic memory here. Remember, when you're doing dynamic memory, the memory fluctuates up and down a bit, which is a good thing if you're trying to maximize the use of memory on a lot of your virtual machines. Just remember, it is going to take up some host CPUs to CPU power to figure that one out. So just be aware of that. Okay. All right. Now look what we got here. Each virtual machine is going to have a single network adapter to start. Now you can add more adapters later, and I recommend you do. But see, the whole idea is you got to create those virtual switches first, because without those, you're not going to have these options here for network adapters. So I'm going to go with private for the first one, and I'm just going to take the defaults, install the OS later, because I'm not going to do that while we're all sitting here. All right. So the virtual machine, there it goes. It's creating all that stuff. Now, not just for the test, but for real life purposes too. So let's say I've got this virtual machine here, and I want to add another adapter, right? So I'm going to right-click this virtual machine. I'm going to go to settings. How much RAM do I recommend for virtual switches? Well, virtual switches, you're not going to be, okay, that's a good question right there. Let me just interrupt for a second here. You're not going to really set memory for virtual switches, so that's a point you don't need to worry about. But for virtual machines, it really depends on what operating system you're trying to run and what you're trying to do with it. Like, for example, if you're setting up a Windows server, I would recommend at least 2 gigs just for the bare minimum. I mean, I've seen Windows servers run on 1 gig. That's just, you can't do too much with them. So the whole idea is that you want to, as best as possible, follow the same recommendations that you would as if you were installing stuff on a physical machine. So if you're trying to get a Windows server up to do a lot of things, 4 or 8 gigs at least would be good. Of course, did you have limitations for whatever's physically on your machine? Like, for example, on this computer, I only have 8 gigs of RAM, so I can only do so much with virtual machines. But on the machine that we record our courses on, I think they've got 32 gigs of RAM. So we've got quite a bit of versatility with the virtual machines. So you do want to sort of spread that out. But the whole idea is, as far as recommendation, I would just follow whatever your operating system requirements are and just go with it as best as you can. Because, you know, whether you're setting up virtually or not, system requirements don't change. So just go with whatever is, yeah. All right, good question anyway. So now we can add another network adapter. This is now getting to the good stuff that James was asking about. Here's your virtual switch. So I'm going to add an external one here. And it's good if you name these well, because this way, you know, we know this one's private. We know we need an external one here. I'll click OK, and presto. Now this virtual machine's got two network adapters, one that sits for inside this private network in case I want to do that, and one for the outside world, external. So I don't know how much that helped, James. Hopefully it helped a little bit, but really if you get any kind of a question on the test as far as this goes, just remember the virtual switch manager is a really important thing to set up first. Make sure you've got what you need over there. Then you can make whatever network adapters you want. That's really the key. So that's the one thing that people tend to forget to do. I mean, half the time I forget to do it. So, alrighty. All right, well, that's a good start for this session. Who's next? I think somebody might have asked something I couldn't really hear. What to expect on 902? Well, a fair amount of troubleshooting, because that is about, what, 40% of the exam, I think they said it was? Let's see. So that, have good knowledge of all those different commands in the command prompts, especially for Windows, because you're going to get questions like, what command would you use to do this? What command would you use to do that? Like, I don't remember the exact question. And if I did, I would be giving those away. But, you know, for example, know what the CD does, change directory. Know what the MD does, make directory. All those different commands that you see in the objectives, make sure you know those. Now, there's a chance you could get asked one on the simulation question to do things, but you can pretty much count on getting at least a couple of multiple choice questions there. When it comes to operating system stuff for Mac and Linux, really you want to focus on what the different things do. So like in the 902 course, I cover some Mac tools. I actually got on a Mac and covered some Mac tools. And in Linux, we covered some of those tools. The most important thing with Mac and Linux is just to understand what those tools do. The chances you're going to get a configuration question on that are pretty small. Eric just made a really good point. Make sure you know your different recovery options for your operating systems. So what I'm talking about there is for up to Windows 8.1, you don't have to worry about Windows 10, but Windows Vista and 7 and 8 and 8.1. If you can, get the labs built, get some practice as far as booting into the recovery mode, the recovery environment, and then basically practice through it, going to the command prompt, doing a few things there. I mean, it's stuff that we outline pretty well, I think, in the videos and also the project workbooks. But you can, like, there's a pretty good, without giving much away, there's a decent chance you're going to get a simulation question on recovery options. So it does behoove you to know that fairly well. You know things about fixed master boot records, stuff like that. The boot rec commands I would focus on. And also, don't overthink it in the sense that you could get a test question saying, well, how do you display the different options for things? Well, that's just the / question mark on command prompts. And they might word it in such a way where they're trying to get you to overthink it. So don't overthink it. All right? So that would be for the first two domains on that, all the operating system stuff. And I would also say make sure you get some good amount of practice with the control panel, because you could be asked a couple of control panel questions. And one thing I pointed out in the course, and I want to point out again too, there really isn't a whole lot of difference in the control panel, going from like Windows 7 to Windows 8. I mean, yeah, there's a few subtle things, but if you get the control panel on one of them, you're going to do just fine with the rest. Because once you get inside the control panel, it's basically the same thing. For Windows 8, you want to know about the terms and things like that, so you want to know that hovering your mouse over the right-hand side is going to bring up some options, because you figure that is a bit of a different thing they're asking about, so Make sure you know those. Now, so those, like I said, that'll get you pretty well through these first two domains. Now, I have gotten some feedback, funny thing, on the 902 course saying, man, you don't know a lot of detail on the first couple of domains for operating systems. Well, have you ever heard of the letter CYA? And I'm happy to report to you all that the people who what's the name of that company? ProCert? Yeah. Okay, so the ProCert company actually gives ratings to courses and how they cover the objectives. And we had to make a couple of adjustments, but basically they said we nailed every objective. So you can be pretty confident what you're seeing in that video will get you covered for the exam. And, you know, don't forget to practice the project workbook, do the practice test, you know, do your due diligence here. But yeah, we did get all the objectives hit at least. So that's something that we felt pretty good about when we were told. So now I'm just going through on my other screen here the 902 stuff because I just want to make sure I don't miss anything. When you get to objectives, or domain 3, security, you know, be able to go in and yeah, I'll take that question on Aaron in just a moment. That's a good one you got there. Yeah, so when you get over to the security domain, yeah, make sure you understand all the definitions of all the different malware types. You know, understand the definitions of phishing and spear phishing and social engineering and zero-day attacks and all those things. Make sure you just, for the common prevention methods for physical security, just be aware of the different kinds. You might get asked a question on what supports the what you have type of authentication, so things like ID badges, stuff like that, smart cards, tokens, those things. Do take the time to go through the project workbooks and get some practice on the Windows security settings, so make sure you understand users and groups, different types of permissions for shares, for system files and folders. Make sure you understand BitLocker and what it does. That's, again, this is all 902 stuff here. Mobile devices, just be well up on the different ways you can secure mobile devices, different screen locks, remote wipes. Make sure you're up on that. Know about the different kinds of authentication on those things. Also with security, make sure you know about destruction and disposal methods and how to secure wireless networks. I've mentioned this before in the tutor sessions, but you really want to make sure you get a copy of the objectives for any test you're going to take and go through those. For CompTIA, for A+, if you see given a scenario, that's basically telling you there's a decent chance you'll get a simulation question on it. I'm not saying you will, but there's a decent chance. If you see something that says identify or describe, the chances you're going to get a simulation question on that are pretty small. Because those are just more multiple choice questions like which tool you use to do this and that. Those are the terms and definitions. Okay, so then getting back to the 902 test, software troubleshooting, make sure you practice up on troubleshooting the operating system itself and then also some different Windows troubleshooting things. So make sure you know your tools, know what msconfig does, know what defrag does, know what regedit does, all those different things. Let's see, what else? For mobile devices, some of these, truth is, some of these questions are very much what you would do in real life, I mean, like if it's like if a mobile device is overheating, it's probably the battery. It's overheating. If you have no Bluetooth connectivity, for example, make sure Bluetooth is turned on. It's easy to turn those things off. So for the troubleshooting questions, I always tell people, just put yourself in there. What would I do in that case? And you're going to get, 4 or 5 choices. Make the best one. And trust your instincts on that. And then the last, operational procedures. Just make sure you know what ESD straps and mats are there for. Know about proper toxic waste handling. So, how to handle batteries and toners and CRTs. Know about the personal safety stuff. Know about customer service. And again, that's all I don't like using the term common sense here, but it's all basically just, you know, what would you do if you got put in the situation, and how would you deal with customers, and how you talk to them, and all that stuff. So those are all good multiple choice questions. Like, you might get a question on 902, so the customer's already blah, 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 what do you do? Well, the best answer is to calm the customer down. We demonstrated that in the video for the course, too. So anyway, that's a nutshell of what you can expect on 902. Last but not least in the 902 test, make sure you know the very last objective, 5.5, which is explaining the troubleshooting theory. I can just about promise you, you're going to get a couple of test questions saying, so-and-so did this, now what's the next step? And it all ties down to the 6 steps in the CompTIA troubleshooting theory. If you get that down, you'll have no trouble with those questions on the test. So make sure you get that one down so you get yourselves a couple of easy ones for the test. So, all right. I know it's a pretty broad answer for 902, but it's a pretty broad test. So anyway, I don't know if that helped much or if that was just rambling, but hopefully somewhere in between. Okay, so Aaron had a good question here. It says, after A+, Network+, Security+, I'll be set to take CPTE and then CDFE, then CISSP. In other words, you're going to be in the Mile 2 world for a while, Aaron. All right. So let me start with CISSP. CISSP is just a very, very wide, but not a very deep security certification. It is like 90% theory. So to me, I don't know if this is going to be a really good explanation, but to me, CISSP is a lot like what project managers deal with the PMP certification. It is a mile wide, but not very deep. But it's a lot of knowing how they define things, how they go through terms and definitions. It's, for lack of a better thing, Aaron, it's a lot of memorization. There's some application there, but you're not given, you know, it's not like Network Plus where you're given something to troubleshoot. It's not like A+ where you're given a busted machine and say, here, go fix it. It's a lot of theory. So that's what makes the CISSP quite a bit different than the others. So that's one thing. Okay, I got one question. Is 901 and 902 combined? Absolutely not. They're 2 separate exams. So that's an easy one. So that's the one thing with CISSP. It's just that it's very theory-based. The CPTE, in fact, I was just looking at that course the other day. Remind myself of that. The forensics one, the CDFE. That one, your best study is going to be through the Mile 2 courseware. Actually, I would tell you that for both CDFE and CPTE because that's the certifications that they host. And I've stamped their courseware. Their courseware is actually quite good. They've got good practice tests. You know, their videos flow really well. So the Certified Digital Forensics Examiner, yeah, basically that would be one I'd probably go CIS. Well, you could go CISSP first just to get the basics down for that, and then tackle the 2 Mile 2 ones. I mean, if it were me, that's the way I would go. But it's not, Aaron, there's not a real right or wrong with that one. I mean, you could go with forensics and then CISSP to get some of the other concepts down. I guess it just kind of depends on what you're trying to pursue, really. The penetration testing on the CPTE, I would probably do the CISSP before that one if it were me, but it's not an absolute. The penetration testing, that's more of an ethical hacker type of situation. So Aaron, my family advice to you on that one is, if you could, yeah, see, I'd probably do ethical hacker before that one if I was going to do both. I don't know if you're planning on doing both, but I would probably do ethical hacker first because they kind of have that set up to where ethical hackers is somewhat of a prerequisite before. Well, they don't have that. They don't have that as a prerequisite for penetration testing, but the two go hand in hand. So penetration testing is subset of ethical hacking. It's part of ethical hacking. So it just depends if you want to learn overall ethical hacking stuff or you just want to focus on penetration testing. I mean, it's really your call there, but the more information that you can read about ethical hacking, the better off you'll be for all this stuff. Past CASSP, I'm saying. So, but like I said, the Mao 2 stuff was actually quite good. Who's next? Oh, one question came up about scheduling the, I'm going to make this, have I used either Kali Linux or Security Onion? No, I have not. Okay, so one question has come up a couple of times, and that is, should I try taking, about the A+ exams, should you try taking them on the same day? All right, well, I'll put it to you this way. I probably helped literally hundreds of people get their A+ in some way, shape, or form. One person did both tests on the same day. So I'm not telling you no, but I'm telling you that of all the people that I've had in class, out of all the people I've helped study, one individual took them on the same day, and he passed them both. He had studied like crazy, and he had some experience in the industry already. But I had another guy who was going to take them both on the same day, and he took the first test and passed it. He had driven in from out of town, took my A+ course that I used to teach in the classroom. It was like a week long or something like that. And so Friday afternoon, he took the first test. And then he passed. And he was just wiped out. So I looked at him, I said, you really want to do the second test today? And he's like, well, I'm going back out of town tomorrow. I'm going back home. I said, what time? He said, midday. I said, well, come in tomorrow morning. We'll do it then. So those of you asking about should I take it in the same day, I would recommend no. I'm not saying absolutely don't, but especially if you haven't taken a CompTIA test before, any of those tests are going to be a little bit mentally draining. So I'd probably save it for another day.
Yeah, I agree.
Some people have said a day, some people have said a week. I'm not here to tell you how long you should spend in between, because everybody studies in a different fashion. But I'll just tell you my own deal here. The first time I got the A+ cert was 11 years ago, but I did update my certification for this 900 series, and no, I did not take those tests on the same day, even though I knew I was going to do just fine on both. You're just tired after you take a test. I don't care how good you are. I mean, I will say I have taken more than one test in one day, and I've been successful at it. But I'm not really in the mood to do that again if I don't have to. So, good question. All right. A lot of good overall general questions today. This is, good high-level stuff. Not much screen editing you'll have to do. That's okay. But anyway. Okay, who else? That's one of my cats in the background. He had a question too. I don't know what he's asking me. Would I mind going briefly what's over on the 901? No, not at all. Not at all. The 901 test is more of the hardware end of things. So they don't emphasize hardware nearly as much as they used to, because people don't fix hardware as much as they used to. But 4 domains on the 901 test: hardware, networking, mobile devices, and then the last one is hardware and network troubleshooting. When it comes to hardware, make sure you know the insides of the PCs quite well. Make sure you know how to configure a BIOS, because you could get tested on that. Jim, yeah, probably. Know the different types of motherboards, the different components. Make sure you know the different types of RAMs. Are the north and south thirds still relevant on 901? Unfortunately, yes. Yeah, they are. Even though that's half that's embedded now. So just know your different voltages, different parts. But look, I can give you one of the most important hardware aspects, and those of you who've taken the 901 test, you can back me up on this one, is actually specifically Objective 1.9. It says this: given a scenario, select the appropriate components for a custom PC configuration to meet customer specifications or needs. Meaning, you could get a couple of test questions saying, hey, so-and-so wants this kind of a PC, and there's about, what, 6 or 7 different types? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different types of PCs. And it's up to you to pick out the best PC for them. So on that, you really want to look for keys that make these things distinct. Like, for example, if it's an audio video editing workstation, make sure they have a specialized audio and video card. Make sure they have a large, fast hard drive. Make sure they have dual monitors. Let me ask you all this one, those of you who are in the A+ game right now. What would you say is the most important, 2 most important things to have for a virtualization workstation? Anybody know this one? RAM? Yep, absolutely. And CPU. Jim, you've got it. Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. So those are kinds of the questions you could get. You could also get a simulation question to where you've got 2 PCs side by side, and you've got all these different parts, and you've got a description. One person wants this kind of a PC, another person wants this kind of a PC, and it's up to you to make sure you mix and match those parts in the best way. So like one of them could say 8 gigs of DDR3 RAM, the other one could say 4 gigs of RAM, and you got to figure out which PC fits which model. So that's why I'm saying 1.9 is really important. It's not hard, you just have to remember what Tom Tia thinks as far as which is which. So, yeah, different device types. Make sure you know your different cables. So, video cables, audio cables, network cables, USB cables. Make sure you are, well, 4 gigs out of it. Yeah, it is true. Just true. You're welcome. So yeah, know about different input devices. I mean, those are pretty, I don't want to say they're totally self-explanatory, but you know, they've got these things like microphones and webcams and stuff. It's, like I said, pretty self-explanatory. Know how to install printers. Oh, that reminds me, for 901, all you settings for 901, make sure you know how to share a printer properly. Just saying. Just saying. Know how things go through printers. Know about virtual printing, so know about printing the PDFs, stuff like that. For networking, it's a lot of hardware. Also, there's an objective on the test 2.4. By the way, and I know this is a shameless plug, we got all this stuff in the project workbooks too. I can't emphasize that enough, and I'm not just saying that because I wrote them. That's not it. I'm saying that because they're there to help you get ready to pass these things. Simple as that. And get your job ready skills too, of course. But yeah, know about different TCP and UDP ports. There's a list of protocols you got to know about. Basically, you want to basically know how to get a network started, how to do some basic setups. I mean, it's not going to be as robust as Network Plus, but you want to know how to set up a small network. They're expecting A+ techs nowadays to be able to set up small office, home office networks. So you figure those are networks with 10 or fewer devices. So play that up. Know about your different tools. Know about your different mobile devices. Know about hardware and network troubleshooting. And there's a lot of different things there. So, and some different commands too for troubleshooting, like the ping command, the ipconfig, and trace route, those types. So yeah, those are basically what you're going to see on 901. But again, the most important thing is make sure you have a list of the objectives, go through every single one. Make sure you know those, and then the parts that you don't, go back and watch the video again, do the workbook exercises again, and we'll fill you in. That's the reason why we pretty much did these courses in the order, objective-wise, for the A+, so that you have easy reference as far as making sure you're covered. So Jim has a question. Are we going to fill out the CCNA stuff at any point? Well, I got news for you. We are going to be releasing the new ICND 1 exam this month, the course. ICND 2 is coming in November, and the IINS in December. How's that for an answer? So this month, next month, December, we've got a Cisco course coming out each month. We realize that some of the exams have just expired, so we try to get these courses built as quickly as we could, but also make them to where, how do I put it? There's plenty of interactive stuff in these courses. So we give you some ways in which you can get some practice and things like that. By the way, hope I'm not talking out of school here. Anybody studying for Cisco? Can I give you some friendly advice? Pay really close attention. Anytime you see a show command, just saying. Be very much in the show commands for verifying and troubleshooting. And yeah, Jim, I can emphasize those Cisco tests are. It's like you got to take one just to see what's there, almost. Oh, you took which one did you take? The 200 one, the 120 or the 125? Yeah, 120. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. See, now you got to take the 125. Which there's a few differences, but I've got a lab up on the LearnKey website that's got the 100 to, excuse me, the 101 to 105 differences, and I'm working on the one for 200 to 205. So I should have that up in the next few days, and I'll let you all know. So, but the updated courses, yeah, we're rolling out one each month for the rest of the year. I think the ICND one's going to be out in about 2 weeks, give or take a couple days. So, but yeah, Jim, we are updating those. So, all right, what else? Oh yeah. Don't feel bad. I'll confess to all of you right now on a certain unnamed certification test I took. I got the administrative distances backwards. OSPF to EIGRP. Oh. Some stupid reason I thought OSPF was 90. It wasn't. Oh well. Guess I need another cup of coffee before I take another one of those things. Okay, what else we got? I am going to be in here Thursday afternoon, so don't know if that interests any of you, but two EIGRPs. What do you mean? You mean for IPv4 and v6? Yeah. They don't make the distinction on these exams, internal versus external. In fact, the only external protocol is on the ICND 2 exam. It's the Border Gateway Protocol, and they have like one example. But for this round of Cisco for EIGRP, yeah, there's v4 and v6. So I don't know if that's what you meant by 2. But yep. All right, what else we got? Going once, twice. Well then, those of you who sent me those phone numbers, thank you so much. I'm going to forward them along. Oh wait, what's this? In my studies, I was helping a friend fix his PC. I believe he has a virus in the program that was partially deleted instead of uninstalled. Well, there are two possibilities, either yes or, well, if it's partially deleted, it could be a virus. It could also be where somebody went in and deleted a couple of folders that the person should not have deleted. So what my recommendation on that would be, see if you can do a system restore. If it's happened recently, you can do a system restore to where you sort of get things back to where they were before that half-hearted uninstallation took place. and it won't affect any files that you have. I mean, if it's too late for that, then you have to just try to uninstall as best you can. But you know, you can do a system restore. By the way, that's a possible test question on the A+. You know, somebody goes along, they do an installation, and their machine kind of goes poof on them a little bit. You know, what would be the best first move? And the best first move is to try to do a system restore. Don't get caught now with the test question answer that says do a complete, you know, overhaul of the machine. You know, reinstall the operating system, all that stuff. No, that's not the correct answer. The correct answer is do a system restore. So thank you for bringing that up. All right. Anything else? All right. Well, I'll turn this back over to Tristan then. Hey, listen, everyone, thank you for having me in here today. This was fun.